Now, what are some of the advantages? Maybe I should have called this features. What are some of the features of KFS? When we talk about it, what are the things that we talk about? Well, there is workflow. Workflow is remarkable in that some universities say things that used to take 2 weeks now happen the same day. Things can happen in minutes that used to take hours or days, and it does get you out from under paper. Workflow is freestanding. You can attach it to a legacy system. In fact, we have universities that have implemented Kuali workflow that have not implemented any Kuali applications. They think it's simply the way to go, and it's also a good way to ease into the Kuali world, to get to see the magic, and it helps sell your campus in many cases. Another feature are the edits and business rules attached to eDocs. Now, what is an eDoc? It's an electronic document. In the old days, we had forms. They were paper. You might be doing a budget, or you might be doing a journal voucher, or a requisition. Well, we don't have the paper anymore. These are electronic documents you call up on your screen when you're doing your work. Well, for each of those documents, there are business rules, and that transaction has to pass the edits. It has to conform to those rules. Maybe the rule is, well, you don't want equipment charged to a labor account or something like that. You will get out of the box these rules, but you need then to adjust them for your own institution. But I think you'll find they're very flexible. They can be changed by your local functional people so that you can operate the way you wish to operate on your campus. So the ability to have each eDoc have its own rules and edits really ensures the integrity of the data. The data won't go anywhere. It won't enter workflow unless it passes the edits. There are import-export capabilities. You could prepare some large entry offline and have it in the right columns on an Excel spreadsheet, for example, and then just import it as an input into KFS. Likewise, you can download data from KFS down to a spreadsheet and further manipulate it and work on it. Document attachments. You can attach electronically almost an unlimited amount of information. You're setting up an endowment account. You can have the original letter from the donor. You're setting up a grant account. You could put it in the Word document. You're doing a journal voucher, and you could attach documentation as to why you're doing this. There is probably no end. You're doing a requisition. You could attach the specifications for the vendor to follow. And all of this then is part of the electronic record for all time. Now KFS, of course, has accounts, as we mentioned, very simple ID numbers and object codes. But if you need more detail out in the department, typically, you can have sub-accounts or sub-object codes. If you need only one account centrally for a department, but the department manager says, look, I really want to keep track of 3 different themes that are going on here. Or in my object code, I want to keep track of, you have travel, I want to keep track of travel of 4 different people. You can simply say, let's use some sub-accounts, let's use some sub-object codes. You can budget, also by sub-account, as part of the total account. You can get reports by sub-object code, by sub-account, which may be helpful to someone out there managing a unit, even though you may not need that level of detail centrally. That's another feature of KFS. There's a transaction audit trail. You can go from a higher level summary, descend lower and lower. You can get back to the month. You can get back to the individual eDoc transaction that caused that value in that sub-account or that account or that sub-object code or that object code or that grouping of object codes. You can always get back to the initial document. If the document was entered into workflow and rejected, it's still part of the audit trail. If the document had to be resubmitted, it's documented under a new number, so that there is a very good trail of every value in KFS back to the underlying transaction. There are automated entries at each update. Account integrity is always preserved. Assets equals liabilities plus fund balance. You can do this at the individual account level or for groups of accounts. Every time you make an entry, there'll be offsets made by the computer to keep that balance. It's usually the cash ownership offset that is dynamically allocated with each transaction. Indirect costs charged every update. Offsets to encumbrances, accumulating those totals with every transaction. So your file is always up to date. There is not month-end kind of manipulations. You are always making these updates as you do the transactions, and you do your updates typically daily. There's real-time access to pending entries. Now, what is a pending entry? You initiate an EDOC or electronic document. It then has to go through, it passes the edits. It's a good account number, funds available, if you're checking for funds available, then it enters workflow. It's then called a pending entry until it's posted. Now that could be 2 days later. But meanwhile, you'd like to know the effect of that on your balance. So when you go in with our balance inquiry program, you can say, show me the balance, not only in my account that's been posted, but include all the pending entries. So in effect, you're real time, even with something that was proposed 2 minutes ago. When you go in and check your balance, you can see the effect. Of course, if you want, you can say, I just want to see the balance after posted transactions. You can say, I just want to see the balance after approved pending entries that will go in tonight's update. Or more likely, you'll say, I want to see everything that's been proposed so I know exactly where I am. Very good for an investigator with a grant, for example, to know exactly where they stand. And you do have 24/7 access to balances. Anytime you can get to a browser and you have clearance, you can see your balances, including all those effectively pending entries. You don't have to wait for them to be posted in tonight's update.